Okay, you guys are on.
Awesome. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 PM today. We're going to be going into executive session, and we'll resume after our executive session here at open meeting. So I'll have a roll call into executive session. The board will enter executive session pursuant to open meeting law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining of an open meeting if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and it's with the police union. So Kathy,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Jason, yes, Steve,
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
All right, we will return after our executive session. Thank you, Chris. Awesome. Welcome back to the Select Board meeting. You all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
to
of
the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one
Right,
nation,
you should be good.
God.
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
all.
Just like the
Hope so.
voting announcements at school. It kind of starts and then it just goes. You don't stop. Once you start, you don't stop. You just go.
All right. No public comment? No department comment updates? All right, discussion and possible vote Salem Street at Washington Street. Presentation from TEC.
Is there anything you want to say first? Or just go?
Thank you for being patient.
All right, there we go. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Sam Gregorio. I'm the senior project manager.
You gotta mute your computer, just FYI. Sorry.
I don't know.
You had to mute his microphone.
Must have been fun for the people at home who heard the couple
What
times.
is it? We can't have a computer near the microphone?
It causes feedback.
Yeah, that microphone is like, it's that kind of day.
And with that, I won't
Are we-
go back to the screen, but
Okay.
this is good enough for now.
Yes.
So once again, my name is Sam Gregorio. I'm the senior project manager for the traffic group at TEC. TEC, our office, located just a couple miles upriver in Lawrence. A few weeks ago, the town reached out to us to look at a traffic operational and safety assessment for the intersection of Washington and Salem. So obviously, this is one of those locations. It's a major cut-through location between Bradford 97. I won't say how I'm probably guilty of most of that, however, sometimes. So that's my way to get to Haverhill, being a Raleigh resident, so I apologize in advance as we continue the discussion, if you still want me to keep going now. So as part of that, we looked at a couple different things. Obviously, the volume of traffic, the speed on the roadway, and the crash history. Those are no things that we can just look at and do from either the crash reports that are out there, or volumes we can count, speeds we can collect. But obviously, a lot of it just talks about how we just get out there and look at it. So, even as someone who's driven through quite a bit to this location, until you just kind of stand out there and just watch for, even just 30 minutes at a time in a row, then you just say, oh, okay, that. So, doing several different field visits out there at different times of the day, able to kind of see what we determine to be what we see as some of the safety challenges for that location. So at least in this presentation, it's kind of in bulletized form. There's a memo, a draft version of our technical memo that went out to the town already that kind of goes a little more, text in detail about each thing. But so I will touch on those, I guess, in more of a brief setting, being obviously just to keep the presentation going, and then kind of walking through some of the short-term to long-term improvements that we see that could happen at this location. The report themselves has, general order of magnitude cost of what those would be. For the record, those costs are generally based off of what happens if you were to hire a contractor to do it. A lot of these things can be done through the DPW, for instance, though. So, if there's a lesser cost associated with that because they are already on the payroll to be doing work at West Road. So with that, obviously, and I already mentioned it, this is an intersection that has a lot of cut-through traffic between Bradford and 97, 97 being the main route that they're going to get out to I-95 on the other end of Georgetown. From there, and obviously, you can see it's mostly a commuter pattern anyways, because the volumes actually flip by the time of day. So what you'll see on the screen, and for those at home looking at the presentation, the number and then the number in parentheses next to it is the AM versus the PM of that movement for that worst hour of the day. So it's basically just, again, a flip. So that just tells you it's a major commuter road, and that would suggest cut-through. Even with this volume, where we're talking about 6,000 cars a day on Salem Street, there's not enough people in Groveland to produce that number on one single roadway in one corner of the town. So that's how we know really right off the bat is that many. In a software sense, and I say that because you don't necessarily see this when you're actually out there, but in a software sense, it does operate at a, we'll call acceptable level of service. So I have up there on the screen a BC rating, what we would on our, so think of it almost like school grading in order. But that being said, that software doesn't take into account the fact that you necessarily are necessarily seeing things, and therefore you stop. So I'll give the example because it's going to be one of the first safety things on there. You drive there, it's actually at this time of year, it's actually that perfect time. You're driving Salem eastbound, and the sun is right there. So that flasher is gone from view. The stop sign is gone from view, and everybody therefore drives differently because of it. But in general, the speeds aren't what we'll call way overbearing compared to what's actually on the roadway. So just starting with Washington Street, because that's actually the most simple. We're actually, the operating speed, 85th percentile, so that's where 85% of the people are driving that or lower. That's generally what we see as like the design value when we are looking at roadways. That's generally in line with what the statutory speed of the roadway is. It's 30, it's typically settled just from normal Mass General law. Salem Street, this is a count that was taken inside that 25-mile-an-hour zone. And we're up to about 35 for that 85th percentile. So we're about 10 over. So most cars, more than half actually, I believe, are driving at that point that are over. Some of that might not even be the fact that people even realize they're on a 25. You're coming out of a 35, you're about to enter another 35 after the intersection. And one of the things we're actually going to talk about as one of the issues is those speed limit signs that we actually have there are actually way far out from where they're actually supposed to be, which makes the 25-mile-an-hour zone bigger, which you would think is a safer condition. It may not be, because then you just lose track of the sign, and now you're just driving with the roadway as you forgot you were actually in 25 by that point, and now you're entering where you should be stopping. There wasn't a lot of what we'll call crash history here, so this is for, well, I always caveat this in every presentation, reported crashes. So these are the crashes the RMV gets in hand from your crash reports through your insurance company or through the state police or the local police. So that's, whatever this number is, it's probably higher because people don't necessarily report the fender bender when they go by. They just get in their car and say, we're fine, we're gone. But for things that actually are on record, over those 6 years, we did look at 11 crashes, 10 of those being angle crashes. So not something that you're seeing a lot of rear ends, which you might expect, for instance, on a solar glare location. But it's, of those 10, 7, the crash report specifically saying the person went through the stop sign without stopping. So this is where we rely more on reports versus what's in like the online database from the RMV, is the report will actually tell you if the person actually just blew through it or not, or at least what the perspective is of the police officer or the person filling out the report. If it's not a police report there, again, there's always a caveat that you're always depending on two people arguing about who was at fault. So you do have to decipher through some of the other data to make sure you have it right. And 3 of those particular crashes actually denote driver inattention or distraction, cell phone. So it doesn't necessarily say the cell phone, but that's generally the primary distraction point that we get in a lot of cars. And obviously when we have a roadway that's curving, a roadway where you can't necessarily see signs up ahead, that becomes obviously a real concern if you're not paying attention to what's in front of you. Again, going through the different safety challenges that at least TEC has identified at the location, a lot of these are more in detail when you get to the memo. But just to touch on each one of them. Again, we already talked a little bit about that flasher in terms of the solar glare. That actually picture up in the front quarter is kind of a good example for it. The picture actually shows it a lot better than what your eye sees. It's a lot more blinding when you're driving through it. But obviously, if you can't see the flasher or you can't see the sign on that roadway, for people who may not be familiar at all, there's no reason why you think you're stopping. And that condition somewhat also exists on Washington South, not because of solar growth, but because the trees overhang the roadway and you're coming uphill. So that flasher is lost until the last couple hundred feet, which does give you theoretically enough time to stop. But again, if you're even a little bit distracted or there's someone in front of you, there's that chance for the rear end. Excessive quarter radii, so what that's basically meaning is your corners on 3 of the 4 corners are extremely wide. So that just adds pavement. The more pavement you have, the faster people go.
Wait, say that again?
The pavement, the corners have a
Oh.
very wide radius as opposed to being very, very narrow. So
Oh.
a right turn could pick up speed going around a corner, for instance.
Oh,
There's just a lot of asphalt out there. And once you see more, and that kind of ties in one of the ones further down when I say blending, curb line blending, if you just see more asphalt, that little person in the back of your head is just saying, go faster. And you don't even know you're doing it. Site distance limitations, there's actually asterisks on this, and that's just because it's an all-way stop. The requirement there is I just see the other driver at the other stop line, but if you ever wanted to change that, for instance, or you're worried about maybe a traffic signal in the future, for instance, and now you're worried about whether it should be right on red or not, that sight line comes into play, and we have really restricted sight lines at this location, whether it's the building corner on the northwest corner, it's physically the building, right there on the back of the sidewalk, or even as simple as somebody you normally would think, but on the southeast corner, that residence has a small little parking area on Salem. Car can legally park there. That car is in the middle of the sight line.
yeah.
So, but he's legally allowed to park there. So
Yeah.
what do you do, right? So, low hanging wires, so they're above what a normal clearance would be for a car, but anything of greater height could have an issue coming through there. Or, for instance, again, if we're going to talk about maybe a potential of a signal in the future, those wires would be right in line where those signals would actually be. So that visibility to where you would look. Fader to misplaced traffic signs, so I talked about on the misplaced side, I talked about the speed limit signs, maybe in the wrong locations from where they're supposed to be, and that's a state mandated item. Speed limits are controlled by the state, not by the towns, no matter what road you're on. Therefore, the signs are there placed by that regulation that's in place. But even faded signs, and this is nothing more than just service life. Things get old. And if you're not there every day to just kind of think about it and doing it, they just become faded, the reflectivity's gone. But even things like that, and the one that comes to mind here, you're driving on Washington southbound, that advanced stop sign that's out there, just right next to the dried up culvert next to the church,
Yep.
is just bland yellow. It doesn't really stick out when you're driving by it. So you think about that at night, and your headlights are hitting it, and it's not shining back at you, which is what you really want. There's some pavement deteriorations there, so obviously this player has been resurfaced. I forget, like the last 5 years or just about 5 years ago. Once you get beyond that, though, you can actually see what we call alligator cracking. So that tells you right there's probably something structurally with that. Doesn't mean you can't drive on it. It just means that something to start looking to in the future. And then when you get to actually the stop lines, even though it's been repaved, you get the rutting in the actual line. So that tells you, again, it's something below the pavement, not necessarily the actual surface that you might be redoing every few years or more often than not. I'm going to jump to one of the big ones, which is the curb line blending. And that's kind of light to this picture down the other corner here. And although, pretend the leaves aren't there, even if the leaves aren't there, the curb line there is about 2 inches or so between the sidewalk and the road. That's usually a 6-inch gap. And in this case, it is granite, which is good. But if that granite, you can't see the granite because it's the same level, then the granite kind of gets lost, the whole point of the gray versus the blue, for instance, on the road. And so, again, what I'm talking about, that blending, you just kind of see a 6 foot wider roadway as you're driving.
So you're saying the lines aren't, the sidelines aren't in the right place?
Oh, no, the curb. So there's granite that separates the sidewalk and the road.
Yes,
Usually that sidewalk would be 6 inches above the road. Over time, things settle. It's as simple as that, just like your house would settle, just like anything
okay.
else would settle.
So-
And just so things settle over time, what you end up getting is if it's asphalt sidewalk and asphalt pavement, you get that blending. It just looks like the same thing when you're driving 35 miles an hour down the road.
Okay.
So again, little person in the back of your head, you drive 5 miles an hour more because you don't even notice you're doing it. Parking encroachment, I think this is something that the town has somewhat dealt with before, with the auto center. And they've painted lines, so there's already a somewhat partial fix in place. But even just as simple as without there's really separation between that parking lot and what would, I would kind of classify as a sidewalk. It's not traditional, it's not an actual sidewalk yet. But even just cars rolling All it takes is a brake nut to roll, and there's nothing, no baller, no curb, no nothing really keeping that car from going if it starts going, so. But with that, that kind of ties somewhat into the next one, and I'll jump to the second part of that, the gap in the system. There is a sidewalk on Washington, south of the intersection. It just ends a property and a half too short.
Yes.
And it would actually line up with that area to be a sidewalk if it kept going. So it's just, you just hit a wall of grass. But in addition to that, with all the rest of the pedestrian type accommodation in the area, just, again, age, service life, things have dropped out of compliance. I mean, theoretically, once asphalt sidewalks, I mean, the day after you pave it, it's kind of tipped out. I mean, that's just what happens. It's real life. So, but just looking into things that we can do to make those back to be compliant. And I guess one of the more tricky ones, and this is the one where it's more coordination based, there's no direct recommendation. You'll see it on here as coordinate or talk or discuss with. But those driveways for both the auto center and a couple of the other residents there are really close to the intersection, and some of them have multiple driveways. So it's just the discussion that needs to maybe happen when we get those improvements about, should some of them be narrowed to maybe something that you could still fit cars through, but something that gives them less space to get through, less conflict therefore with the roadway. If people are coming out at 5 feet over here, then you move 10 feet, another person's coming out at a different time. Or even just the opportunity if they could be closed. I mean, that's, again, a discussion item. It's not a do, it's a, because you always want to make sure they're allowed to have their driveway. They were granted it at some point. But making sure what we can accommodate now and knowing that the intersection has some safety issues. So what the report does do is it goes again through a bunch of different improvements. And there's a, what we'll call a 5% level conceptual graphic that goes with each of these. And obviously, we didn't have a survey yet. We don't even have the right-of-way tied down yet because we're basing off what's in the assessor's map right now, which is close, but it's not directly tied down with deed information and stuff like that. And that will come once any design or anything like that starts. But looking at things that we can do for what we'll call short-term, and this is that area that's less than a year. You might have money on hand already to do so. Things that don't take a lot of design, something in DPW might even just be able to just go out and quickly do. And there's quite a bit of them that we've listed. And again, there are more detail involved with them in that study. And most of these are kind of not only short-term, but they end up being low cost as well. And low cost could range. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean anything's like $5. It means, it's not something you necessarily have to go out and go find a grant for or go find a tip money for with the state or even necessarily dive fully into what your Chapter 90 funding is. But things, and some of them, things could be tomorrow as long as it's on hand. And some of these things you have to order, but even thinking like back plates on the flashers, something to provide an extra 5 inches on each side of the red indications, just so that sun's blocked a little more. So even if that's giving you 150 more feet of visibility, that's still 150 more feet of visibility for something that's, $50 kind of thing. So cutting down the tree canopy, I'll say I went to the tree canopy or trimming. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't. I'm just saying, then you get into more steps.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about those speed limit signs, even just relocating it back where the state regulation says they should be, which I believe west of the intersection is right at Oakland Terrace. And then to the east, I believe it's right before the curve starts to go back kind of south, about 700 feet. So the report says the exact distance, but it's 700 feet east of the intersection. Right now, they're actually all the way around the corner of the sign, so. Something even as simple as, you wouldn't even think about it, but the plaques under the stop sign say four-way. The four-way itself would indicate that there's an approach that has no stop sign. So changing them to all-way, so everybody knows it is everybody. And with all those driveways right there, that's where it comes into question.
Right.
Is that driveway part of the intersection? Are they allowed to go? Do they have a stop sign? From your angle at your speed, you don't even know if they do. And it's not the people who drive every day that you may be worried about. It's the people who don't. So, increasing sign height. Some of those signs are actually kind of low where they are to the road. So just lifting them up. Usually we're at the bottom of the sign 7 feet, especially ones up against sidewalks. Exactly the reason why you would think. Sign hitting your head. It's as simple as that. But even that, think about where you are in a car. And if you want to be looking down, you're looking, especially if some of these are upgrade, you want to be looking up towards the road. Especially at distance. Removing unnecessary signs or relocating signs that are misplaced. So one of the things I did bring up, there's a makeshift paving sign that someone stapled onto the utility pole that's blocking actually the stop sign ahead of it. So things like that. And those are,
Of course.
people put up signs.
Yeah.
But even something to think about, we have the Beasley Park signs up there. Not that those are a bad thing, but where they are, they're positioned right under the stop sign, which means, are you looking at that sign, or are you looking at the stop sign? So keeping them there, but bringing them back on the approach. To say like, yeah, up ahead, take a left, instead of take a left at the intersection when you actually get there, because you should be focusing on the intersection, not the wayfinding sign when you're there. We did say assign reflectivity, and that's as simple as just replace the sign.
Yeah.
It could be the same sign, just replace it for the short money that usually comes up with. And then, I know back in the past, you had the stop markings on the road. Even thinking about just putting those back, just something as a reinforcement. This is actually a good thing for even like something like Washington South. We're going uphill, that stop's gonna actually be much more visible when you're kind of going uphill,
Yeah.
just by your own angle of driving. Reapplying the markings all together, in particular the crosswalks. Right now, there's only one official. There used to be two. I think it's back down to one. The long-term improvements is to kind of rework the pet improvements, so maybe you're back up to two at some point, but making them high visibility, so it's instead of just the two longitudinal lines, but adding whether it's ladder markings in between or anything like that, aesthetic treatments, anything like that, just to make it visible from further on. So that's not just a pedestrian thing, but it also, without doing it, it's not supposed to be used as this, but it does it anyways, is it gives you that longer visibility of there's, again, something else happening in the roadway coming up if you don't happen to see that stop sign. There's two different things. You'll see this in the long term too, or the midterm, sorry, the decrease in the corner radii. Short term, could be as simple as pavement markings. Just makes someone feel like they're tighter on the roadway. That midterm improvement is kind of bringing the curb lines in. If you're where, you might be into something getting grant, might need to do much more of an elaborate improvement. Again, I talked about the overhead wires, but there's also a utility pole on the north side of the intersection. It's what we call a guide pole. Its only purpose is to hold up the pole on the other side of the road, which has a tether wire on it, holding it taut. That's there, but it's actually in the direct line of sight of the stop sign when you're approaching. So even if it's just not remove it, but relocate it, if you push it 3 feet back, it's just where's the property line. That's maybe what you're worried about at that point. But again, some things, it's as simple as just, that one's a little more complicated, but then you get Angren involved or Eversource or, but increasing speed enforcement, obviously this is purely town by town. It's always a challenge. We get it. There's only so many cops. There's only so many cruisers. And there's only so many places they could possibly be. And, something's happening that's emergency related. The speed enforcement is not the most important thing at that time, but something just to think about, even if it's just targeted random, pick a Tuesday, one day a month, pick a Wednesday on a different day, someday another month, so no one knows when it's gonna be. Unfortunately, we do have Waze now, and Waze kind of puts a damper on a lot of this, because the police will just come up on your Waze where they are. But if that gets them to slow down, it's still got them to slow down.
Yeah.
So, but even looking at things like dynamic speed radar signs, or, okay, a little bit more of a cost associated, but something that could still just be bought off a shelf tomorrow, type thing out of a catalog, or from a vendor. And as much as people think that they do go up ever, they do work, because unfortunately shame is actually a pretty good deterrent. It's not necessarily meant to fix the person driving 55 and 35, they were gonna drive 55 anyway. But that person who's driving, 35 and the 25, you can drop them down to even just 30, just by a little bit, oh, yikes, that sign's there. Then that might just be enough to make them drive a little bit different at the intersection, so. Again, the report has a graphic that kind of lays out each one of those improvements where they were, a little more detailed, and obviously the report has a little even more detail than that for each of these bullets, including a cost associated with it. But that's just to give a visible recommendation or visible representation of what the town can do in any one location. It doesn't mean you have to do every one of these improvements. It doesn't even mean you have to do, even if you want to do, you have to do them all at once. It's just one of those listings that you can keep on file to say like, hey, we can knock a couple of these out right now. We can knock a couple of these out at some other point. Maybe there's something that gets superseded from another improvement that we can cross off the list. So it does go through midterm to long term. That midterm's kind of 1 to 3 years, something that takes design, and therefore you can't just necessarily find that, not only just design money, but also that construction money that might elapse your individual year that you currently have, maybe with your Chapter 90 money. But I know you might see these in a couple locations now, things like enhanced LED signs. So stop sign has the LEDs around it, so it has a little radar in it. You get within a certain amount of feet of the sign, and then it starts blinking. And then it shuts off if the radar just pick up a car's coming. So not overly expensive, but something that does at least say, oh, this is something different as you're approaching it, especially if you're into, darkened area coming up from Salem westbound. It's really dark as you're coming around the corner from down low and you're coming up into their section. So even something like that at night just stands out a little bit more. We did talk about already, maybe things you could do with driveways. Again, these are all discussion with the property owners. Hey, what could we do? What can we help you out with? But even if it's just as simple as narrowing them up a little bit from where they are, pretty wide open right now. I say physically separated, it's a 737, so that's the auto dealer, that's the auto shop. Parked cars, so something as simple as throwing a couple bollards in there. It could be that simple, it could be back curb, so a piece of granite curb just on the back side, so a tire hits that, or curb stops, like you would normally see at a parking spot. Just something that the physical car would actually kind of tap before it would go anywhere. We're not talking about hard speed, but once it gets going, it's going. So, I say
What is the ROW? That's the.
right away.
Right away.
So,
Okay, so you want them the cars not to be able to accidentally.
yeah, right now they're a
Roll.
little bit over the right-of-way line, but again, we're talking about assessor's map right-of-way lines at the moment. They're not locked down, but right now, theoretically, they shouldn't be parked in the right-of-way at all.
Right.
That's town's property, not the centers,
Oh,
but.
Okay.
But without surveyed down lines, we weren't going to say in the report yet that they're over. But it's something just to look into if that's, so they are, the right-of-way line curves around that corner. So for all intents and purposes, I would believe that when we tie it down, they would be on their property. But you just physically also want to keep them from trailing over, which they
Right.
could do all of a sudden. All it takes is someone just, hitting the console
By
and
mistake.
knocking it down, drive by accident, even when the car's off, or driving, if it's
Yeah.
neutral. So,
Okay.
and usually a parking space has something
Yeah.
to keep you from going further, basically, so.
Yeah.
Obviously, reconstruct the curb, again, we talked about the curb radii, so in this case, it's bring those curb lines in. So again, when those dollars become available, you could just do that and push everything in, as long as you can still get, I think, for that location, there are tractor trailers, but not a lot of them are actually turning. Most of them are going straight through when they go through, whether they're on Wash or whether they're on Salem. But for that case, you want to make sure obviously, not just your fire truck, but probably Haverhill's ladder probably needs to be able to get through as well, just in case. That would probably be, they probably have a larger ladder, I'm guessing, just because it's Haverhill. So just something to think about, anything around here we're designing. Again, looking at the reconstruct sidewalks and the ramps, just putting compliance back in, making sure the grades are correct for ADA, but also connecting that gap in the sidewalk. I mean, you have that positioning of area in front of the auto shop, make it a sidewalk again. I mean, it could be that simple, it's already kind of there. Again, the guide pole, well, depending on where the right-of-way line, what we could do to that, or what we could do to the other pole on the other side that's being held up. But usually the guide poles are there for a reason. They're there because the wires were tipping the thing over, so. At first, that like spoke for discussed, driveway clears kind of goes up to what we were talking about before, but, and then at this stage, you kind of want to evaluate what you have for pavement. Anything doing with pavement reconstruction is going to be good money. That's one of those long-term improvements. It's drivable, you don't have to do it right now, but it's something you at least want to find out what you're into. It could be as simple as that evaluation, just, take a core sample of where the pavement structure is and stuff like that, even just finding out what's down there, how deep it's going, is it compliant to the current standards of what those roadways should be? And then from there we have longer-term recommendations. So one of them is to look at traffic signal control. Doesn't mean you have to put it in, it just means something to continue looking at. Right now, the signal is warranted. So it's not warranted under what we call warrant 1, which is like 8 hours of a day of volume. It's warranted under 4 hours of volume. So with that, there's 4 hours of the day that have a volume that satisfy what the federal standard is for putting in a traffic signal. That's based off of Groveland basically being, would be in this case classified as an isolated community of less than 10,000 people. And it's a built-up location of that isolated community. So this particular area, this intersection, and then probably up to Center Street, basically be considered the built-up area, because once you kind of get out a couple blocks from there, it's just, it would be, you would think it's rural, it's urban, but you would think it's rural. But with that, what we would have to do for any signal control any sign switch outs, if you did things like overhead mast arms, where would they be? You actually got a good amount of room on each corner. You already got a mast arm there, it's holding up a flasher instead, though. So there is space for at least that, but provide that extra level of protection that comes with the signal versus an all-way stop. And that would also be something that the town really should look into as more development comes online, obviously with the 3A zone up there as well. It gives that opportunity as things come in for a site plan review, whether it be for the planning board or the zoning board for that matter, to look at that opportunity, every developer, hey, can you recheck warrants? Maybe there's something towards contribution towards it as it comes online or something like that, knowing that it might be warranted now, all because it's warranted doesn't mean you do it. It just means that you don't do it unless you're warranted. So, and that warrant could fall in and out of, you're kind of at the threshold numbers at the moment, you could fall out of it. On any given day, if someone just recounted, and maybe you're 5 cars short or something. It could be as simple as that, so. But as more development comes online, once you hit that warranty target, you're gonna be over. And I know there's a lot of other things the town's been looking at up in that area as well, so, not just residential either.
Well, like you said earlier, being a cut-through, it depends on what's gonna be coming from Haverhill. And like you
And
have
that's a good point.
development going over there.
It's not just your development either. So the report goes over your developments and the things that have been talked about at your meetings and planning board, zoning board, et cetera. But it doesn't necessarily take into account to whatever Georgetown decides they want to do or whatever Haverhill wants to do, or Boxford for that matter, actually comparatively. Not that, probably less so in Boxford, but yeah. Or at least my mother-in-law would have something to say about those meetings. She lives in Boxford, so. Starting to look at what we can do about things like bike accommodations. There aren't any formal bike accommodations here. It doesn't mean there's no bikers. It just means there's no physical bike lanes, there's no shared use paths, there's nothing that the roadway supports at the moment. But we start looking at the potential of, if it's more than just like grant funding and you want to go for something like state funding in the future, which, state tip money, once you apply for it, doesn't mean it's happening tomorrow. There's a process, and sometimes it's 7 years until you see your project go in. But, there's also larger dollar values with that when you do it. So then you start looking at, well, just this intersection, are we going further out? And if you do that, some of the requirements that come with that tip money is bike accommodations and pet accommodations. That's the state standard. So, or providing them why you can't do it. But then that gives you the opportunity to look at where can we extend these out, knowing that there is a bike community around. And then again, this is now where we start looking at full pavement reconstruction, especially when you start getting it again with those big money type, whether it's grants or tip funding. That's something that if the state's actually going to put money, they're probably going to require you to do this full pavement reconstruction, because if they're going to invest their money, they want you to make the service life as long as possible at that point. So, but outside of that tip funding, which I didn't list here, because that's just a general, every town knows the tip funding availability, but there are grant opportunities for money that's out there. And some of those monies have now gone up just in the last month or so. The state released a lot of the new thresholds for funding, relaxed a lot of the requirements in some cases on some of them, the grants. I use the example of, like, I didn't list it here, but like Complete Streets, where you don't necessarily have to wait 3 years now to get your 500,000 back on the pot and just reapply the next year. To that state, it was a question of, why are we stopping people from building pet and bike accommodations? We should just keep letting them do it if they're not willing to do it. But the first one there, it's just we're talking about signals. Mass DOT has the local bottleneck reduction program. Right now, that went up from $500,000 to $1 million. And that's construction funding. That's through the state directly. The state will also pay for the design and also pay for the construction oversight on top of that $1 million. So always something to look into if you're thinking about doing it. But also, that doesn't stop you from going to some of the other grants. And I know it's something we had discussed with Rebecca a few weeks ago, lumping grants together as long as they all line up. And you can do the application so they line up, but trying to find more ways to bring in that pot where you might still hit the threshold for certain different grants. This is obviously a signal grant I talked about, but the catalyst funds out there for design work for things near the 3A community zonings districts, or shared treatment spaces, things that have to do with peds and bikes, for $300 of design or construction. But obviously, again, we talked about there's opportunities to do pet upgrades here, and that money could be used towards that part, for instance. So with that, there's ways to fund things. So it's not just all just out of your Chapter 90 funding or all out of your town coffers for what you have to go to town meeting, get approved through a warrant article or anything like that. So obviously, that's always the subject when you go through it about how much money we're spending over the next year. But if we can provide those other opportunities to get you there, that's always how we want to do it, because we can get a larger project. And it's always a shame when you have to go and you have to tell people, hey, why does this stop here? It's just because that's where the money ran out. So, because that's it's usually the reason, it really is, about why we stop where we do. It's just because X amount of dollars are available, and that's all we have at the moment. So you just hope the next one comes down and you make the project go a little bit further, so.
On that, what does that mean, the reset travel lines for sight lines?
Oh, sure. So one of the things that I was doing, and this is one of the, doesn't need to happen, we were talking about on Washington southbound, that when you look towards Salem, you have the building corner there, right at the back of sidewalk. So one of the roadway there is actually wide, the pavement surface. There are shoulder lines there now, but if you were even just to shift the shoulder lines over from their current position, like 2 feet, just so basically, the roadway stays the same, but you just shift all the markings over 2 feet. You still keep 11-foot lanes, for instance, which is perfectly fine for that type of roadway. But sight line is measured from the edge of travelway, it's not measured from the stop line. So if you now allow someone basically inch forward an extra 2 feet from where they normally would have been, how much further could I have seen around the corner? And that's really the idea. So even with just simple pavement marking changes, you could solve some of it. Doesn't mean that's when people aren't going to stop at the stop line. They will. But even if you're providing them that more inch-up space, that allows them to see around corners. And again, those midterm, and the midterm is what you see in the graphical here. Again, that's in the report as well. I'm going through where each of those individual parts and pieces are. The long terms are more in the bullet format. I didn't want to put a signal on here, it would just clutter the picture with all the equipment, what would be there. So the symbols for them are much bigger than the signal actually is, so to actually make it visible. So I didn't think you'd want that in the middle of the page. But that's still an option to actually do, like put a signal in as one of our like longer term recommendations. Yeah, that's kind of the overall scope that what we were looking at so far. The town received a draft version of our technical memorandum a few weeks ago. It's not finalized, and that's just because obviously we're doing this meeting. There'll be obviously more discussion. We want to make sure we had feedback added into. Obviously, there's things, I can go out there as many times and I can drive through like I normally do, but again, I don't live here every day. I'm not driving through every day. So we welcome obviously the feedback, questions, comments, things that we can still add to the report, or even if it's anecdotal information of things that you see as a town, that we can make sure that we at least formalize or memorialize in the report. So it can, again, be used as that, almost like that checklist in the future of things that we can work towards. But again, at this point, yeah, I welcome, I usually had a question slide that's on here apparently. But I welcome any questions, comments, at least for at least.
Ed, do you get a question?
Could you go back to the screen you had there with the, that one right there?
Oh, sure.
On, you see, it would be eastbound on Salem Street. Where the intersection is curved right there.
Yep.
That was done a long time ago for the purpose of tractor-trailer trucks making the right turn. If it came out to a straight 90-degree, they couldn't make the turn. The same thing with on Washington Street, heading north, right turn onto Salem Street. That was a couple of years ago when I was a little kid. There was always it never came out at a 90-degree turn so that the larger vehicles could make that corner. That was one of the reasons. One of the other questions, looking at your traffic data, it doesn't look like that the volume meets the requirements or the warrants for a traffic signal there, a traffic light?
Well, we'll meet under what we'll call warrant 2, and that's the 4 hours of a day.
I'm talking about the MUTCD guidelines for
That is the MUTCD guideline, warrant number 2.
but it doesn't meet the requirements, even 'cause pedestrian traffic, according to your study here, there wasn't much, and I think there's more than that.
than
So
what you-
again, the counts that we do are on a specific, if this was over a couple days, so, I mean, it was sunny and stuff like that, but it's all dependent on who's ends up walking that day. So it doesn't mean there's no pedestrians that we don't see, it's just that what was collected on the day we counted. Overall vehicular volume doesn't necessarily change that much on a day-to-day basis. Everybody goes to work the same days, and if they don't, the next day, the certain amount of other people went to work especially now after COVID, more hybrid working, but, at least on a MUTCD front for warrant number 2, it does meet warrant number 2 under the guise of, and I said this before, the isolated community of less than 10,000. So with that, there's a different threshold of the volume for both warrant 1 and warrant 2, warrant 1 being 8 hours of a day. So under that, it would warrant under 2. And then as we get further on with other development, it will more likely to exceed the warrant 2, even without that designation, and get closer to warrant 1, although that will be a little more tricky over 8 hours of a day, this location.
You know, perhaps, you had that, I think, on a 3-year plan, so perhaps after the, in 3 years, it might meet everything.
Well, and on 3 years, it's really on the list for the 3 years moving forward, mostly because of, in order to put a signal in, whether, even if it's not under grant funding, it's direct from the direction of the town, just the design, the procurement of equipment and things like that, you're talking, and even just to get the funding for that design or funding for that construction, going through town meetings and warrant articles, et cetera, would necessitate that timeframe. But once that comes in line, under where we are right now, and again, something again to keep looking at, because I have warranting conditions in here now, doesn't mean that a year from now, volumes don't change, which is why at each development stage for anything that comes online, whether it's in the 3A zone, whether it's something else in some other location, we want to keep looking at, as long as this is the intersection in proximity to that, looking at the warranting conditions again and see if you're still tripping. Because it could be as simple as, another road gets built somewhere else, by the way, and now more people take 495 up to 95 and come down as opposed to cutting through. It could be as simple as that, and now you took away 50 cars. I don't think that's necessarily happening, but, there's always that chance.
Did you do a speed count of the east and west on Salem Street after the stop bar?
So the speed counts that we have there's a specific location on Salem, and it's to the east of the intersection.
Traditionally, after the stop bar or a traffic light,
They are well beyond the stop bar, because we don't want the influence of someone who would normally be braking at that speed, a normal braking somewhere around 300 or so feet or less. So we want the tube, in this case, it was a camera measuring the cars going by. It was a location, I don't know the exact one, but it was probably 500, 600 feet or so up the road. And that gets usually, your cars are already kind of picked up speed, or your cars haven't started slowing down if they're going the other direction towards the stop sign. In this case, and even on Salem, like again, at that point, we're still over 10 miles an hour more, the speed limit. So they picked up speed pretty fast, actually.
now, when you did your speeds on Salem Street, east and west, were the speeds greater, heading eastbound on Salem Street after the stop? Or did you do a count in both directions?
So this does both directions. It's, again, one location. We haven't done both sides of Salem Street itself, but on one side of Salem Street from the intersection, one side of Wash Street north of the intersection. But it was in both directions, so it is separated, and it's over multiple days, the count's actually in the appendix of the report. So that looks at, in this case, if this is east of Washington Street, westbound is facing the stop sign, so obviously it is slower, at least for the average speed, although the 80% percentile speed is about the same at that point, which again, 10 miles over the actual limit. And that's similar when it was at the count for Washington, as you approach the stop sign, it's a little lower, because again, there is anticipation, some people know the stop sign's coming. They are just gonna stop, even know how far up the road they are. There's gonna be a little bit of braking comparatively.
Almost.
All set, Steve?
No, I mean, I think this is great information. As someone who lives on that street, right off of that street, certainly drive it multiple times a day and see some of this.
So you're the volume, no.
What was that?
So you're the volume, no.
Yeah, it's all me. I think in terms of looking at that short-term list, it would be interesting to understand, kind of order of priority, like what is likely to have the most impact. So I don't know if when the final report's put together, you can kind of rank those a little bit or something of that nature. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and we could do something like that. And I know some of them are in our report are lumped together, and that's just because, for instance, anything sign-related,
Yep.
you might as well do it all at once, because if you're gonna, for instance, make an order to a sign manufacturer, doing it 3 times gets costly. You do it once kind of thing, and you get the cheaper cost kind of at bulk. So there's some things like that you'll see in here. Where we try to combine things that are, like even pavement markings, for instance, you don't want to bring that truck out twice.
Sure.
So when you bring it out once, you do everything you possibly can for the fact that there's a truck cost that day, whether it's, $2,000, I'm picking a number out of my head, but like $2,000 to have that truck just be there, let alone do the actual lines, for, $3 a foot, for instance, so.
And then just one other follow-up question. I know it sounds like when you looked at the signage in the area, I'm assuming you looked directly, kind of within a certain number of feet, like for the speed signs. Did you go all the way up and down Salem and Washington?
Yeah,
or
we
is it just-
stopped like about, and we don't necessarily report on ones that we believe to be kind of, those are fine for the third purpose of this.
Sure.
But this is more of an assessment of what's potentially an issue or needs a countermeasure.
Directly adjacent.
But we're talking like the 500 feet up the road at that point, because then you start getting to the signs that have nothing to do with the intersection. And then it becomes, are we spending money we should be spending on here at something that's further out? Not that that's not important, it's just, at some point you have to have a cutoff.
Yep, sure. No, just wanted to understand how far, kind of in either direction you
And that would change if it's something that's directly related to the intersection. Like
Yep.
if there was an advanced something, and it was for the intersection, I would go 1,000 feet if I had to, kind of thing for that, because that's something for this.
I mean,
Becky?
I'm actually shocked that it's only 35 miles per hour. So I live where it's 25 miles an hour right on Salem Street. So, yeah, I thought it would be higher, but the fact that it's still 10 over for a large bulk of people is,
And just to put that in context, it's the 85th percentile, so 15% of the people are driving more than that. And those are the ones you usually notice. So
okay.
you usually do notice the one guy driving 60.
yes,
It's like, oh God, that was fast. So he's in that 15%, he's in that 50% that are above it.
right, especially going down that hill, right? That's where I hear quite a bit of it. And I think this was great. I mean, there's a lot to look through. So our packet was pretty big, so thank you. So I was diving through the data, but I'm really excited that you gave us a condensed version here. For Rebecca, has Arthur seen this yet?
Excuse me, yes, he has. He was
Yeah.
included in the meeting that we had with Sam and his team.
Oh, great.
When he initially brought forward the data.
Yeah.
So he is aware and has been involved.
Okay, perfect. Because I also love how it's sectioned off as like the easy wins, low-hanging fruit, low-hanging wires, whatever we want to call them. Those were the easy improvements, but I know, I don't want to scope creep this, but, Washington and Salem Street is another intersection that's further down. Not as busy as this one.
Center.
Center,
is
thank you.
Salem.
Washington and Center, thank you. Washington and Center Street is not far, and I know people complain about that too, so maybe taking some of those easy improvement wins for this intersection, maybe we can, not to have you look at it, but it might be good for the town, for our highway department to say,
Yeah, and it has a similar context intersection, so when you look at that one, it's actually very similar in nature.
Yes.
I mean, Center's not the same as Salem Crossing, but
Yeah.
it's still getting you to 97 if you're going north towards here, for instance. That's where you're cutting over as opposed to staying in Salem.
Right.
And so it allows you, even if this is something that went first,
Mm-hmm.
it allows you to, what worked, what didn't,
right,
what mattered, what didn't.
right,
And not that you still wouldn't do the improvement, it's just, okay, now your order of ranking changed. Oh, maybe we should do this first, because that was more bang for the buck when we actually did it here. So,
yeah, absolutely. And even purchasing signs, usually you buy more, they cost less, maybe, per piece, but maybe. Just something to think about. So that was, yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This was enlightening and solidified basically my concerns.
Kathy?
Yes, so I was impressed with the car count, the cut-through, that, were what, 1,000 cars, was that a day? or a week?
Salem has,
You mentioned 1,000 cars, I know, at one point. And you said, given the size of our town, that's got to be.
Salem has a
good.
little over 6,000 cars a day.
6,000, more than that. Okay. So it's a,
But if your
right,
population's only about 6,000.
yeah. So it's clear that this route and the Washington route are becoming increasingly used as cut-throughs. It's not just the growth in our town, it's the problems on the highways on either side and people finding alternative ways of getting around that part of the highway that's, I know 495 up by the Andover Bradford stretch is a nightmare most days. And so if you learn to get off early and you can cut through Groveland, get where you're going to go. And that, I don't think that's going to change. I think it's going to get much worse. I don't think that this speed thing is going to get better. It's going to get much worse, much worse. And, to that point, like as you progress along Salem, what I've noticed, I mean, we've been on this side of town for about 30 plus years. And like when you try to come out on Center Street now and just turn right onto Salem heading to Bradford, there's a blind curve. You better be darn sure someone's not coming around that corner at that moment in time because they're going at least 35 plus. And you're not going to make it either cutting across or even going right or left. I mean, it's getting worse and worse.
And that goes to the context of what I was talking about, the crash data of,
Yeah.
there might only be 11 reported crashes, but, it could be the fact that maybe some aren't reported, but it also could be the fact that the intersection is at such a condition, at least safety-wise, that everybody kind of knows it, and therefore they drive it as if it was that, and therefore there's just actually less crashes.
Right.
So
But
just
it-
because people are thinking about it, like, oh, I'm going to,
I also think that,
wait for a little larger gap going around the corner because I know I might get slammed.
right, but I also just think the crashes that happen are usually pretty bad because it's going to be a T-bone. It's going to be, I've watched people come down the hill on Washington, go straight through the four-way stop on Center without blinking. And so it makes sense what you're saying. They're coming up Washington with the trees and the wires and the shade, and this, they don't even see the stop sign. They just go. Their phone's out, It's going to get worse. I love the recommendation to fix the sidewalk break on Washington, I think, because that would lead up toward the VZ Park area. It's a beautiful park, and it's a shame not to have people be able to get there on a sidewalk, that is easy to navigate. We have a lot of walkers in that area. I mean, you can any time of day walk around and see people walking their dogs, their kids, their whatever. So the sidewalks are very, very heavily used in that area a lot. And you just raised a lot of really, really good concerns that I just hadn't even thought about, like the power lines, coming across the road, the line of sight, the lines on the side, the crosswalks that we don't have, which we did know we don't have them, that we maybe should have. And we also have several bus stops in that area, both elementary and middle high school bus stops, more than a few. And just, I love all the recommendations. I like the recommendation about the sidewalk, the right-of-way around the commercial business there on the corner, as well as, talking with the homeowners and the apartment dwellers about access on and off the road so that everybody can get in and out safely and have this be a much easier thing. Like I said, 30 years ago when we moved onto, it was easy. It was easy. You didn't worry. We didn't even have a four-way stop at Washington Center. Just could sail on through. I think we had a two-way maybe, right? Maybe they made it four. I don't know if you remember. They didn't have a four-way at Washington and Center for a while. Maybe it was just two-way, just cutting across on Center. Washington could go straight.
It was on Washington Street only.
Yeah. Now we all have to stop.
Yeah.
Or we're supposed to.
And just we were talking about earlier about the context of, even the development in town and development out of town, but, every town around here is trying to pass 3A.
Right, but I noticed like,
Oxford not necessarily included at the moment, but
did you, I don't know, I know Rebecca talked about the lines you made on the end of the driveway here at the town hall, the little dash things. They do make you kind of pull forward before turning, so you're not like whoosh, cruising off to the corner. It causes you to to slow down and stop, I think.
Yep.
Because, Yeah.
That was part of the traffic calming mechanism, and they're recessed so that they're grinded down so that your tires will feel the difference, so that it alerts you that you're cutting too far over.
And-
I
and
like
that-
the calming.
And that kind of leaves, when I was talking about painting the intersection corners, you don't have to bring the curb in.
Right.
If like you put the design vehicle down and then the fire truck can't get around the corner or something like that,
Yeah,
okay, you can still do it at pier markings, and same thing is out there. But what that also does is if you can extend where the actual like normal travel lane keeps going, and that stop line, you can actually now maybe push, even with that, 5 more feet forward. You
right.
actually push like I said before, the stop line, people are gonna stop there, but you're allowed to inch forward.
Yeah.
For when it comes to sightline purposes, but you want that initial stop to also kind of be close to the intersection too.
Yeah.
And I think we do mention in here, I think it's, the one that comes into mind is on Salem eastbound, where that stop line, I believe, is like 30-something feet back theoretically from the travel way.
Oh,
So that's a whole car length. Car length's 25 from front bumper to front bumper. So about 19 from front to back bumper. So that means you can fit in a whole nother car from where you actually really wanted that person to stop, really. In order to wherever see clear sight line, or even if it has a clear sight line, just the extra acceleration that's needed to make up that distance. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of distance, but it is. It's so.
you didn't mention extending the 25 mile an hour any wider. You said maybe putting that blinking thing that tells you what your speed is. So you don't think it would be beneficial to make this 25 mile?
I mean, you could do anything you want to do in evaluating speed. So at the moment, I think the decision we have is to move the signs back to where they're supposed to be. Salem Street has a state regulation on it.
Right, right.
Says the 25 mile an hour starts here,
Yes.
right here, and it's a milepost marker
okay.
on that regulation. That's controlled by the state. In order to change it, you have to get approval from the state
Okay,
through an engineering study. That first start point of the engineering study is the 85th percentile speed, which we've now deciphered was 35 miles an hour, which means the starting point to them, if you were to redo it, is 35 miles an hour. Right now, you have 25. It might be don't touch.
oh, they would raise,
So,
you're serious, they would raise our speed because
they could.
people are speeding?
because to them, it's not about if the roadway allows you to drive 35, because the
Okay,
secret really is the speed limit itself doesn't necessarily deter you. If the roadway allows you to drive 35, then that's what people are going to drive.
okay,
So you change the roadway, you change the speed. You bring in the curb lines, you add pavement markings, you make things narrow, you add traffic calming devices. That's how you do it, because the person who's driving 55 is not going to stop driving 55. That's,
Right.
he was already driving 20 over.
Right.
What makes you think he was going to slow down? So, in order to get the speed limits to be the same, no matter what roadway you're on, they're all based off of, your starting point at the moment is based off of, Mass UT has a procedure in place, and have that procedure based off what's in like, Chapter 90, Section 18, and Section 17 for the speed limit laws. And that is that the starting point for your speed limit is the 85th percentile speed, and you can back that off up to, let's say, 7 miles an hour based off the characteristics of the roadway. Is there something geometrically that really deters you from going that fast, that we should make it lower than that? Not a lot lower, but a little bit lower. Is there a school zone? Is there a crash history caused by speed and things
Okay.
like that? So, for instance, on Wash, where it's 30 miles an hour and the 85th percentile is also 30 miles an hour, that's just a redundant speed. The statutory already says it's 30. There is no regulation.
Right.
That's just on a thickly settled roadway that the law says 30, right? So,
okay,
without signage or without a regulation. So the regulation is what changes it from that 30, 40 in non-thickly settled, or 50 in median divided, which is the Chapter 90, Section
has them all memorized. So, yeah, I don't want to tie you up too much longer, just one last question. Do you have data that shows that these, some of these towns have signs that say, thank you for going the speed, or whatever, they have different messages. Do they actually do any good?
Those are the dynamic signs.
Yeah.
That pay the speed. So they actually do, and I think I mentioned
Okay.
where shame is really a good deterrent. They actually do work by shaming people to drive a little slower. Now, is it going to drop you 10? No. But even if it drops you a couple miles an hour and things like that, over time and over how many crashes maybe did you stop or anything like that, does it by its value over the service life of the item? The item itself, one of those signs, we're not talking heavy money here. It's
Right.
$6,000 kind of thing, plus a service connection to the meter. So Over time, did you save that money with even one crash? With one crash, you probably did save the money. Crashes are
Right,
expensive.
yeah.
So, but they do say thank you on some of them,
On some of them, they do, yeah.
setting you can put on it. The only catch that I do give caveat to that and any other traffic calming device and like that is just there is such a thing as too much in one area. You don't put 7 things in one place because then they lose their value.
Yes.
So you'll notice this on, for instance, I call it my Route 1 effect. Again, I live in Raleigh, so you drive up Route 1 between Newberry and Topsfield, and they get the overhead flasher at like every block, going up, almost going, and by the 4th one, you've just
You
completely
stop
disregarded it.
Yeah,
So it's, you don't want to do too many things in one small area. Then
okay.
again, there are some things, and I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying this is the example, but like when we do speed humps, for instance, if we did that, you actually want 1, 2, or 3 together, because after you pass the first one, if there's only one, you step on the gas and you make up your distance very quickly, which is something you actually really don't want. So you put 2 or 3 to make people have to go slower for a distance. Or even on the speed signs, just knowing your location. So you don't
Yeah.
usually want to put those those speed feedback signs outside of a high school, because then it's a challenge to the high school student driving about how fast can I get this thing to work.
I can help
So,
us.
but, so there is context to when you do it and when you want to do it,
Yeah.
and what makes more sense, where it's more valuable to you.
Right, and I've noticed a lot of the signs now no longer post the speed when you're more than 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, it just says slow down. You see that going into New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But thank you, and I like the always stop instead of four-way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes a lot more sense.
yeah,
Everybody has to stop,
yeah.
yeah.
It's just the context of who else was going, and then there's someone hesitating.
Right.
So the condition there is the person probably still stop, but now is their hesitation. And this is the same thing I get with, we call it courtesy crashes, the person who waves you on. Outside of you waving, no one else knows you're doing that, is why you shouldn't do it. Because
They do it
there's
all the
4 other
time.
people of driving through who didn't understand what you're doing,
Right.
and they're just going because they had the right of way to go. And then they didn't realize that, oh, that person got waved in. He thinks he got waved without realizing that that person didn't wave you, and he's going. So, but it's the same effect as that. So just knowing the context of you're not the only person on the road. You put a 4-way stop, is that person hesitating, and therefore someone else saying, he's hesitating, I'm going. And then 2 seconds later, that guy's accelerated in his intersection, and you get your crash. So, and that's,
So no
each
way.
sign,
No, yeah, don't wait.
there's like 4 different ways that that sign could read, and all of them have a specific purpose.
Yeah.
So that's the point.
Yeah.
That's a good point, that's a good point.
And I
And it's the
think,
point of the manual that we mentioned the MUTCD. It's the point of having the signs here, the signals here, everything like that look like the exact same as they do in Kansas, the exact same they look like in Texas. And that's the point.
right.
Yeah.
And we'll have that apartment complex opening next year, right? Having residents probably the beginning of the year. So we have that, I'm sure that, I think you put that into your
Yeah,
data.
they're the ones they at least have in their study,
Yeah.
which way back in the day, I think we peer reviewed. So, 6, 7 years ago, yeah, I was at the board meetings for that too.
This is a good opportunity to be proactive, having all this data, so thank you.
And a bunch of new people who don't necessarily know the road yet.
Yes.
Now, again, a year in, I always say this, they are Groveland residents, they will be your residents, they will be your people. But for the first couple months that they're there, they are new.
Yeah,
They don't know the road yet, they don't know. They will, but they don't know yet.
Right.
So,
Perfect, thank you very much.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your work.
And thank you for waiting for us.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
All right, now we're gonna go on and consider the endorsement of the Garden Club lease.
Mr. Chair, if I may preface
We know what you mean.
It's fine.
agenda item, I would just like to say that we, at an earlier point in the fall, had taken a closer look at all of our leases when we were taking a look at the Knox Building over by the Shanahan Field. So we had taken into consideration Washington Hall as well as the Little Red Schoolhouse, and we had drafted all new agreements for all 3 of those locations. So we did update the Garden Club lease. I did share that with the president of the Garden Club. They did vote to approve the lease as it was already approved by the select board. So tonight, we're just looking for approval from the select board to have the chair sign on behalf of the board.
So I'll make the motion that the chair has our approval to sign on behalf of the board.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? 4, 1 absent. Now we'll move on to the template for the appointed town committees.
So this was more so an agenda item that had been requested by both Select Board Member Baker as well as Castronellis in terms of trying to create some form or template that we could use for all of our
Yep.
additional appointed boards that it was relevant to. If you recall, one of the more recent bi-weekly emails that I had sent out to you, I did go through and identify the committees that this would be applicable to. Many of them are set by statutory guidelines or by our bylaw, so they identify the charge, the mission, they identify the membership, and they have specific rules that they need to abide by. Those that do not have any set regulatory guidance or have, again, a statute and/or a bylaw are the Recreation Committee, Groveland Day Committee, and the Town Study Committee, in addition to the Sustainability Committee, which the board had already gone through and created that template.
Yep.
And from that template that was created by both Select Board Member Baker and Castronellis, I did pull together a template of some of the key items that were used to identify the makeup and their responsibilities, the open meeting law, and some of the things that they would be responsible for, and kind of outline that so that you could potentially use that as a template as you decided to maybe break out and address those other remaining committees to consolidate and provide a continuous form for the board to use moving forward with any future creation. And again, another opportunity for you all to review periodically what had been assigned and update anything as needed.
Yeah, I think this looks great. I think it captured all the key elements that we had in the template we used for the Sustainability Committee. And I do think I brought it up at a previous meeting, I'd like to go through the boards and committees that we can update and actually do that and put them into this format. And then use this going forward if we establish a new committee. I think it helps set the guidelines, but also makes us think about the guidelines when we're establishing that board or committee. So I'm all for this, standardizing this as a template.
Right, I just think it'd be really helpful, especially, we talk about the growth in the town, the new people in town. We want them to join our committees, but we don't want them to get on the committee and then become confused because they got on the committee thinking they were doing this thing, and they're told, no, you got to do it this way. I think that laying it out and saying, okay, you want to, bring before the Conservation Commission a proposal you have. This is how you go about doing it. This is, we laid it out pretty well in the sustainability, and I think a lot of that could just be almost brought over, really. The biggest change would be the charge would be different. But most of the other aspects, I think, would be pretty much the same. And maybe the number of meetings could be changed, that kind of thing. If something, like if Recreation tends to meet monthly, I don't know what they tend to do, but we could also leave that, I thought we left it a little open-ended on sustainability, right?
Yeah, we did. I think,
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
it,
fine, too.
yeah, I agree. And I think it gives us the ability, like composition. We'll know how many people that board or committee has, because I know some
Right.
committees have had issues with that in the past. So I think, yeah, just filling it out, whether we're pulling stuff over or making minor updates, I think it's great to have a template and be able to use that.
Okay, so for our next meeting, let's do the Recreation Committee.
So,
So we'll go through that template and create a good charge, and we'll go from there and see how it works.
yep, can I just make maybe one recommendation on that?
Sure.
If we're gonna do that, I think it would be good to put it out to the Recreation Committee to give us some feedback on the vision and mission of that committee before we just set it for them. Like, let's solicit their feedback before we incorporate
Yes.
it.
Right. Could you, when you reach out, can you send them the sustainability and say, this is kind of the format we're looking at? What do you think?
I just don't know if they meet before our next meeting, that's all.
Right.
They don't need to meet, you can get
Yeah,
all
I mean,
information.
and I think the
Yeah.
same with the town study. Why don't we just send them all the same thing? Send them this is great, this template, and then, but send them the copy of the sustainability that's filled in and say, we'd like, for there to be clarity and transparency, and we want to know from you, how would you like your mission worded? Do you have an idea of a vision? You know,
let them
that
give
could
us-
come from them.
Yeah, let's
think it'd
start
be
with the
great.
Recreation Committee and see where we go from there, how it works out.
Yeah.
What type of feedback we get from the chair, before we hit everybody else, because we might want to change our approach.
Oh, okay, okay.
I can send out the correspondence, and just so you know, as part of the initial research and trying to figure out what boards and the appointing authority, and again, whether or not there's any statutory governance of any of those existing committees, although appointed by the select board, I did start to put together a chart of all of those committees and reference, either Massachusetts general law and/or our own bylaws, and start to kind of put how many members, who's the appointing authority, and kind of get that cited so that we can have like a chart, so that we can have that in the future as well. So
That'd be
I have that
great.
started. It's not finalized, but it is on my list, and I have an initial draft, so we're looking good. And I will send an email over to Patrick Molina, who is the chair of the Recreation Committee, sending him the example being the sustainability with the template form that was generated for your packet, and ask for additional feedback and/or any additional information, and bring that back before the board.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think, I guess I want to clarify too, he doesn't have to fill the whole thing out, just wherever he feels like he can give us info, then we can take it back and
Sure,
Additional
yeah,
detail.
yeah,
just don't want to create a ton of additional work for people.
right.
Okay, so we'll move on to the field use fees for 2026.
Yes, so as you'll note, don't have anything for you in your packet. I did want to
Oh.
put this on the agenda. We have had at least 2 leagues reach out to us about what our fees will be for the upcoming year. I know we had talked about it. I know it was something that we had on our older unfinished business, and I know Select Board Member Baker was initiating that, and then we also had Annie looking into it, and I think everything just kind of stopped. But again, based upon the timing, now that we're in December and the fact that people are looking to reserve the fields, I do think it's something that we might want to look at and make sure that we can set those fees in January so that people are prepared and they can start planning. As we had discussed, there's a couple of improvements that we've been talking about for some of the fields over at Washington Park or Shanahan Fields. We haven't necessarily talked about the timing of potential projects. Some of those projects are being considered by the Community Preservation Committee. Whether or not those get funded, we're not sure. And if they did get funded, they would not be funded until July 1st of 2026. So the project wouldn't impact the spring schedule. So while we have been looking at the maintenance and upkeep of these certain locations, some of that won't necessarily come into play until a later date if and when we decide to move forward. But that doesn't change some of the current fee structure that we have and what we are already required to maintain, or how we're required to respond to any situations that come up on municipal property. So I still do think it's a valid conversation to have now, considering the fact that we went from having, 0 fees to a flat fee for Pentucket leagues, and then for those that are not residents and others, kind of filtering that in and just taking another closer look at it now that we're seeing how that kind of has played out.
Question?
Not so much a question, just a comment. I had worked with Annie on this back in the early summer, I think, and I know she had sent me a bunch of data, and I had actually gathered a bunch of data, but then we kind of got busy with trash contract and some other things. So I can certainly share some of that, and maybe we can, I think it would be good. I think I had looked at what other local towns in Essex County are doing for fees and some of the facilities and what they have, so it might be good to compare that against how we're doing it and then make a decision, I think.
Sounds good to me. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I guess I'm just wondering, are we trying to just align our fees with what other towns are charging, or are we trying to do something more?
I think the biggest thing we're trying to do is just align our fees with the costs,
Yeah.
so we can try to prevent the costs from becoming excessive on the town's budget.
So by what kind of costs? Are we talking about the mowing of the lawn, you mean, or?
Maintenance,
Everything
everything.
operational, maintenance.
I think the other
It's just not
part
the
of it,
mowing, it's the fertilization, it's the irrigation. There's a lot that goes into it.
another part of it, and another part of the discussion that's really important, is that we
Bathrooms.
have a lot of great volunteer groups and leagues that facilitate these sports and activities for the the children and the youth in Groveland to take advantage of. And a lot of their efforts involve fundraising, whether it be calendars, whether it
Yep.
be all these different
They do.
things. And the funds that they raise go not only into the uniforms that you see the children wear, but it goes into, you know, at least with the Pentucket football, it goes into renting the light towers, it goes into putting the striping down on the field. It has the volunteers with some of the dirt over at Washington Park and doing the infield and all these other things that allow them to use the facility and make the facility usable for themselves. And they do a lot of that through their own fundraising. So instead of having them do that on property that they don't necessarily own and making sure that that coincides to a uniformity across the town, it makes sense to do the work for them to some extent and trying to work with them to figure out what makes sense. You know, there might be something with the lines that they should do. That makes sense, you know, but something of fertilizing and what chemicals are they using, irrigation, what are the, so some of those other things that are a little bit more intricate and on town property should be done by the town so that we can
Right.
figure out what's happening. And if somebody abandons infrastructure, what happens to it, what was put into the ground, do we know what is there, do we, like, it just becomes very, very complicated. So trying to, again, find that balance, because the town obviously shouldn't be spending taxpayer dollars on some of these things either. So it comes down to the user fees and how that's all situated. So it is a much larger conversation. It's not just about, you know, what we do already, just mowing the field. It becomes a little bit more hands-on deck.
So are we trying to like, sort of like, in the same way as with the template for the volunteer committees, kind of standardize, this is what the town will typically take care of, and this is why we're charging the fee, because we're going to do this, this, and this for you. And that makes sense.
Yeah, and
You
it'll
know.
also help prevent things from happening like happened to some of the fields in our neighboring towns where the volunteers fell off and stopped. And then the fields and everything just went very poor.
Yeah, okay.
They became
So-
unusable,
So you're making sure that it can be, you know,
sustained.
sustained over time, that whatever fields we put the money into through CPA to build them, we can maintain them. That makes sense. My only concern is just, I think you definitely need to have adequate sanitation facilities at our parks, but maintaining those type of facilities, staffing-wise, we haven't really hired somebody whose job it is to maintain bathrooms across 3 or 4 parks in town. Is there a service that we can employ that, you know, would not entail us having to hire people? I think, because that's one of the concerns you hear people raise, you know, about taxes and all. How many people you're going to hire to take care of that? Now you're going to build this. How many people are going to need to take care of that? So I think that, you know, as part of the fees and all, just trying to, you know, find ways to, you know, streamline things and make it so that we can provide necessary sanitary fields that can be used with the, I agree with the chemicals. You want to know what's being put in. We have to know. And then that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
All right, next, you will have to become a resident.
A what?
A resident. We're going to do the Whittier update.
Oh,
Oh, what
you're
about-
doing it.
Oh, we're going to skip over the review of goals? My bad. Not
Oh, a review of our
Stay
goals.
put.
yet. Review our fiscal year 2026 select board goals.
So these were, I had sent this over in an email document a little while ago, and we had not had an opportunity to get it before the board collectively to weigh in on comments, but the board had gone through and issued goals for the fiscal year, and as part of those, you did a really great job in trying to identify measurables and things that you wanted to see as outcome and results from setting those goals. And some of them involve some updates and some work on my end to make sure that you were getting the information that you needed so that you could, you know, be transparent about how you're meeting those goals with the public. So in efforts to try and kind of break things down, I tried to put it in a matrix form so that we could get a better understanding of exactly when the updates were occurring, what updates you were looking for, and what we were trying to accomplish. And again, most notably, to kind of, again, when you see the bottom of the document, to kind of outline again what we're talking about when we're saying what updates you wanted to see. You wanted the community and engagement reports, you know, bi-monthly. You wanted financial report quarterly. You wanted annually some other updates, and just kind of identify those dates for the year so that we can make sure that we either meet those dates or we're pretty close to those dates. And so this was a draft that I had put together. I had shared this with you again a couple of months ago, and this is just an opportunity for the board to discuss it in an open meeting, to provide me some feedback, to make sure that I'm headed in the right direction. And this is essentially, again, what the board would like to see moving forward.
I say I really like the table format. I think you kickstarted that on me. I'm like, this is great. Now everything's a table. Pretty soon, the pendulum will swing the other way and we'll just have this wild mist. But this is nice because it gives us an idea of where we are heading towards when the town meeting has to be posted. Because sometimes when you're sitting in these meetings, you lose track of time, and you forget how many weeks till this or how many weeks till that. And this is really good. I know our financials have been like right on target, which is fantastic. And I think everybody's gotten so used to it now, it's taken for granted. But I don't think I'll ever take that for granted after coming from where we were when we always seem to be, 6 months behind for a while, right? Well, we're still 6 months behind, but we're working on it. And now, now it's great. Everybody has really worked together as a team, and it's brought this town, I think, into a really good position financially. We know what we have, we know what we don't have. It's good. I like it.
Becky?
I love how this is structured. I'm even looking at the dates, I don't see too many things compiled, because that was part of my concern, was like, oh man, she's just gonna hate the month of May. But looking at it, you probably still hate the month of May, but at least it's spread out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's transparent, the accountability, and does it help you as well too, to sort of keep track, right? So it's not like we're just not throwing something at you. You're like, nope, I know what they're gonna want, right?
The matrix is very helpful to me because, again, like you just said, like identifying the dates, making sure
Right.
that I can check off on those dates, making sure that this becomes a document that I look at like daily to make sure
Right.
that, on the upcoming meeting, I'm going to be putting, a communications and engagement report this month.
Yeah.
That's number one, like this is your report for that month. So it will be much more helpful in guiding my efforts. I just want to
Right.
make sure that's exactly what you want before I proceed with that.
Yes. I'm a big fan. Yes.
I like this.
Steve?
Yeah, I think this is great. I think it gives us something to track to and keeps us kind of on point. This is perfect. Just one minor clerical thing on the local election. It says May 4th, 2025. Could we?
Oh.
Whoops.
But other than that, I think this is awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Ed?
No, it's all spelled out pretty good. It was a good job, and it looks fine.
And myself, I know that some of the stuff we traditionally already did receive, particularly the quarterly financial reports. Those are always been emailed to us.
Right.
But it definitely gives us a heads up and something to look forward to without creating too much more work for our town administrator. So as long as she doesn't do what she always does and goes over and beyond everything that we expect, then I think it'll work out very nicely without being too burdensome. So with that, now I can do the Whittier update.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to recuse myself as I'm still an employee. Maybe when I retire, I'll be allowed to participate. End of the school year.
You need that 1 year cool down period?
No, I don't know. I'll have to ask ethics.
Yes, very true. Very, very true. We have the response to our letter that we sent in requesting that we don't pay for an additional feasibility study for the current school. If you read it, they said that even though 11 communities got together and signed this paperwork that says that we don't want to have to pay that, we don't want our taxpayers to have to pay it, they said, yes, you have to pay it.
Sorry.
So that is very disappointing, very disheartened at that, and I'm sure everybody else at the other communities will be as well. Unfortunately, we haven't had a meeting yet, so I haven't had their input to that yet. And then the other thing, does anybody have any questions about that? Pretty straightforward, simple.
Right.
I said, no, too bad. We want to create jobs for people, so this is what we're going to do. The other was, there was a $3.65 billion borrowing plan for public colleges, which Essex Public College was given 22 million of that. And that 22 million, although they didn't go into too many specifics on how it was going to be spent yet, I'm hoping for clarification at our next meeting. It's for the joint venture for Whittier and Essex, or for the community college to have a shared campus. So even though they're making us pay the feasibility study, they're giving us more money at the other end, so hopefully they'll help cover that and a lot more and bring down the cost. So we'll see.
It made that letter a little bit more digestible, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe. Rebecca, do you know when our next meeting is? December 10th?
I believe so.
So that's when I'll have the next update for our regular meeting, hopefully on the agreement and where we're going with that. So that'll be that, and I'll probably have more information on this as well.
Do you remember offhand how much the feasibility study was? I know,
2.5 million,
okay,
Yes.
to which the community college put up 500,
okay, that's right,
Whittier put up 500,
okay,
and then our portion was going to be roughly about 66, 67,000,
okay.
The
which we
total
all
was
voted to agree to pay out of free cash.
a total was $110,500, and $66,000 would be contributed. The cost estimate with the Whittier and NEC contribution is $66,300,
Okay,
which would be split out over 2 fiscal years.
okay, thank you.
So, which hasn't begun yet, so.
Right, right.
All right, any other questions? No?
No,
Great.
This is great, thank you.
All right, you can come back. All right, doesn't look like we have any appointments or resignations, no minutes to approve. We do have old or unfinished business, which is the US bicycle route that we discussed at last meeting. I went to the planning board meeting because I'm an alternate there, and they brought up a very good point because they had this as part of their discussion as well,
Oh, good.
which I think was because we requested some information from them. So they're gonna do some more investigating into it and give us an actual opinion.
Right,
But something that they did mention was, in terms of trying to route everybody to the rail trail, the riders that will be specifically using this trail
yeah,
are long-distance riders.
yeah,
And they'll be traveling at 20, 25 miles an hour on the bikes.
yeah.
And that's not something you want to put on a rail trail with heavily trafficked pets and walkers,
I
which
get-
made a lot of sense to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Oh.
But my only other thought was, though, that they said, oh, well, we're going to try and bring them, these bike trips through town so that they can stop at the local
Yeah.
shops. And I mean, like, they're keeping them as far away from our local shops as they possibly can. So, I mean, you know, just even bringing them down towards the downtown area might encourage people to stop for lunch or stop in the shop. Or
Yes, I agree.
something. I don't know, you know, it just, they did say that that's, and the other part of their plan, though, is the street that they're coming from, is that Plummer, the one there, that's closed.
Yeah.
So they're gonna have to redo that anyway. So that may change the whole thing. I mean, maybe you should contact that gentleman and ask him if they've looked at where they're gonna be, weren't they coming from that?
Well, I think they're waiting for, well, it depends, it goes both ways. Just like a two-way road.
No, but, I mean, that road's closed.
Yeah, I know. So if they're coming from here and going out there, they're gonna get a roof.
I thought they were coming from there to here. That's why they
both
were,
ways. It's a two-way street. They can travel either way.
oh, okay, because I thought the route was kind of from there to Center to
That's the
Canton.
route that they did. That's what they
Oh,
showed
but you
us, the
think they
route.
might come the other way
Of
too?
course, it's the bikes. They're gonna go wherever they want. They wanna start here, they go up there.
But if we had them come out a little bit higher up, they might hit at least the ice cream shop. I'm still trying to get our town business.
Yes. which I
Hey,
think
come
is
on.
good- Is
We got to give a plug for some of our businesses along this. You got
Very
Pub
good thing you can say.
97, you got the ice cream shop, you got the little plaza store there.
I think the gentleman is waiting for more of comments from us before they
Yeah.
do a lot more.
So we're looking at taking the feedback from the select board. Select board Castellalis had put a recommendation to have the town planner look at it. The town planner is still relatively new to the town of Groveland, so Annie and I would like to work with him to get a better understanding of some of the feedback that was provided by the select board and put together a couple of options.
Okay.
Once we put together a couple of options, we would like to reach out to the gentleman from the volunteer from the
Yeah.
US Bicycle Route
Yeah.
Group, and make sure that those make sense. And then, once we hear back from them, bring that back before the select board to make a determination.
Yeah, you might have to go get ice cream to check it out.
I'm not opposed.
Sacrifice.
I agree. The wizard, the peanut butter wizard. All right, so, does anybody else have any questions on the bike route?
No, just a comment.
Comment, go ahead.
On the bike route. As I mentioned, it was mentioned in the last meeting that they design all of these routes to roads that have little traffic, as little as possible. They don't want to be going down Main Street into Groveland Square and up School Street. They want to go through some of the side roads. And this is not just this, it's all of these bike routes that they map out. They want to keep them off of, especially at that speed, 20, 25 miles an hour plus. So these people are out for 100 miles in a day ride, and they don't want to be hung up in traffic and at traffic lights. They want to be on roads with not much traffic.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say for sure. I mean, the way that they stated it is they're piggybacking on a route that's already in place. What was the route called? Greenway?
Greenway, Greenbelt, something like that.
Yeah, so it's a route that's already in place, and they're just trying to get the towns to agree to let them promote it. Realistically, they don't even need our permission. I mean, it's no different than getting a Google map request or going to the AAA and they're saying, hey, plan me out a route to get from here to here on my bicycle. So it's just, they're looking for an endorsement on a route that they can use. So, yeah, the bikers, like he said at the meeting, they're very well aware of what it is to travel in traffic and travel with traffic, because they do a lot of biking. So I definitely think it would be worthwhile looking at a lot of different routes and options and trying to keep it as close to the Greenway as we can, just because that was the original request across the country. But we'll see. All right, with that, I don't think we have any other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting. We can go to town administrator time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of updates, some good news. Due to our continued success with our insurance provider, Maya, who does our property casualty insurance, we received news that we are locked in for a 0% rate change for the upcoming fiscal year. And looking ahead to fiscal year 2028, we anticipate a modest adjustment of up to 2.5% only. So we are very excited about that. We do have to take into consideration workers' comp and any property valuations that have increased over the last year. But again, that is great news, and we're very excited to work with Maya and continue working with Maya to make sure we have limited increases in the future. For applications for CPA, I just wanted to let you all know that the application process has, or the applications were due on December 1st. We received quite a few applications, and the total requested is about $1.3 million of projects that we're looking for funding. A lot of the projects we had already talked about with the select board or require the select board approval. A couple of the other ones that had not been discussed were Perry Park Phase 2 design, Washington Hall, and getting them on the National Registry, which is something that was already approved, but additional funding was necessary. Trail Improvements Project, which was, again, a project that was already requested, but they're looking for supplemental funding. And also the Community Garden Water Supply. On those projects, I did want to make a note about the community garden water supply proposal. This was not a project that came before the select board to get approval for an application to be submitted. It is on town property. So the CPC will be weighing in on whether or not it's a completed application. The applicant has requested to come before the select board, but I would like to make a recommendation that the applicant also provide a presentation on the Phase 1, which was the design for the community garden. They did provide a presentation to the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission did provide a letter of support for the application. But since the Select Board is the approving authority for the Pines Recreation Area, I think it would be beneficial to have the board be provided that information before making a determination of moving forward. Because again, the request is to actually put infrastructure on town property. I also wanted to let the board know that we are still moving forward with the North Shore Regional 911. We are still set to hit our target date of December 16th. We have ordered the new doors for the police station, including the locking mechanism, and have also placed an order for signage for the panic buttons and other safety features, as we had discussed. As we also had discussed, we were looking to make a transfer of monies from the communication salary line item, since we will no longer need those positions, into the expense line to cover these added one-time expenditures to make sure that we are able to join the Regional 911 communications. Additionally, we have advertised the position of an administrative clerk to support the police department. We have advertised for a 40-hour a week position. And we hope to have that person start shortly after the new year. I also wanted to let the board know that we have put notification forward for the winter parking ban. It is in effect from November 15th through March 15th. For the website update and initiatives, now that the 175th Celebration and Pumpkin Fest are behind us, I know I've said this on multiple occasions, but those types of events seem to take a lot of time than you would think. And coordination and efforts and thank yous and all those types of things. So we're finally able to move forward with the website in a more productive manner. So we actually were looking at the Recreation Committee website. We actually had taken some updates because they had a photo that was part of their website page. So that's not ADA. You can't search it. You can't find it. So we updated that information and put it into the actual web page. We also are including additional features within each of the web page for the public to engage with that information. So if a board is looking for survey or feedback or input, they have an embedded document where they can add that information and we can forward that to the board for their use. So we are taking a closer look at each individual page and updating it as we go along, and we're really excited to see the end product. For the community trail parking spaces on Main Street, great news. The National Grid has agreed to move forward with the asphalt permeable pavement as we had discussed. They were actually out there today digging down some of the soil that they put in and putting additional material over at the site. They are planning to put the permeable surface down on Wednesday, and they hope to have the project completed by the end of the week. And then I also wanted to call attention for the board that on Saturday, BZ Memorial Park was holding the Makers Market, and that was an event that was put on by a nonprofit association, Pentucket Arts Foundation. It's a great event. I'm really glad that we do that here in Groveland. However, at approximately 1 p.m., police dispatch had contacted the highway department and wanted the highway department to come out and sand the parking lot. So this is not in line with our emergency snow operations. It is outside of our normal hours. It requires a 4-hour minimum and on-call for the highway department to come out. Because it is and was a safety issue and a municipal property, we did dispatch highway to go out there and sand the parking lot. That being said, it could have been something that was reasonably requested prior to the event. There was no additional snow event that happened. The snow squalls happened on Wednesday, Thursday. and the highway department said that they'd be more than amenable to go out to VZ on Friday and had sanded the parking lot had they had any concerns about the event on Saturday. All of those details considered, it's just something that we need to be mindful of, and the select board should start to weigh in a little bit more about the resources that we're sharing with some of the municipal properties. At this particular location, the Conservation Commission sets fees for people to utilize the facility. As part of that, like we just discussed for the field use permits, that should take into consideration the additional costs that are associated with holding those events, and especially when they are not during normal business hours. If they're not, maybe those particular events have a larger fee, or they have a contingency of a just in case, especially if it's winter, so that we can maybe invoice them accordingly, since it is solely for one property and not at the benefit of the community as a whole. But again, that is up to the select board to make those determinations and to decide how we'd like to proceed, but I do think it is definitely a conversation worth having.
Can I
Then you'll
just,
see-
before you move on, can I just ask, though, I know like people book the VZ Park for anniversary parties and weddings, and have we ever had to go up and sand for that kind of thing, or we
I've
don't
not
know?
been aware this has been something that's been isolated incident as long as I've been in my position.
Okay, yeah.
But I have found that the more things are happening,
Right.
the more resources that we're using, I think it's
Yeah.
really just important to start having that conversations now, because I think
I
a lot of
agree.
times these things that we've been doing over the years, we've just been doing because, and then when somebody calls it into question, there's really no answer other than, oh, that's because we do it. But there
Right,
hasn't really
right.
necessarily been decisions or foresight into why we do it or what we're doing, or do we all
Right.
agree that we should do that? Was it a decision made by one person?
Right.
You know, is it
Right.
made in an open session? Does the public
But-
get an
yeah.
understanding of what we're doing?
But didn't we get didn't we fund a study to decide how VZ Park should be operating? What would be its best, most advantageous things to pursue? I was wondering where that stood.
100%. So that is something that I had recently sent the board a memo about, and some of the findings of that report and some of the concerns. I'm
Yeah.
actually scheduled to go before the Conservation Commission this Wednesday and discuss that with the Conservation Commission. I was hoping to have that conversation first with the board
Okay.
for them to give an opportunity to kind of maybe enlighten and or share or provide more detail before we had a discussion with the select board, just so that
Okay.
we can be a little bit more respectful of the work that they've been doing and make sure that we're all on the same page before we start diving into different things. But yes, they did provide a feasibility study. They did
Okay.
have some constructive feedback, and we are looking into next steps.
Okay, good.
And then you'll note that I've been trying to work on my memo a little bit to kind of give you a different snapshots of different areas without getting into too much detail. So going into a little bit more detail about certain things that have happened, and then still have the information that we had discussed previously, field use permits, special events, important upcoming dates, procurement, technical review, and then to kind of take a little bit more of the financial snapshot and trying to give you either the budget tracking one week, and then the next week give you a little bit more of a breakdown on other financial related matters. And then also kind of keep you updated on the grants that we have currently before us, whether they be grants that are currently being managed, monies that we currently have on the books, or grants that we're applying for, actively applying for. So I did provide a breakdown of the funds that were awarded, what has been expended, and where the balance is for some of those. It does also include private grant funding, such as the Stanton Foundation for the dog park. We received some money, so we still have that money on the book that we're looking to expend as part of the shade structures and seating. So again, just to keep the board updated on some of the monies and the projects that we have before us, and then also keeping with the way we were structured before with special projects administration, community preservation, grants, and kind of listing those things, as well as the meetings and seminars. And on the meetings and seminars, a couple of things I wanted to call your attention to is that today we did have the Meyer de-escalation technique training. It was fantastic. Every department sent at least one individual, so it was really great to see everybody come together, and the presenter was really great, so I was really happy to see that, and many more trainings to come. I think the next one is going to be a cybersecurity training and teaching the departments more about phishing and just, some of the updated scams that have come into play. And we also did have our asset management kickoff meeting with CEI and the MVPC. So we're really excited to get that project initiated. I did let you know that I will be before the Conservation Commission on the 10th, so I will have an update for you at the next meeting. And then also another point that I wanted to bring up to your attention is that we do have a new employee. Elizabeth Trull was appointed to be the program coordinator for the Council on Aging, so she started with us today. She actually got introduced to the group during our de-escalation training, so a great way to say hello. And then lastly, two other financial updates. One, the auditors are on site here at Town Hall. They've kind of secluded themselves in the back meeting room, so we are making sure that they have all the documentation that they've been requesting. And then we also received our fiscal year 2027 retirement appropriation, and we are looking at a 6% increase over last year, which is a little higher than we would like to see it. Last year, we only saw a 2% increase.
Did our, like us as a percentage of the whole, did our you know what I mean? Because it's based on our salaries as a percentage of the whole. Did that change a lot, or did their retirement budget change a lot? Do we know?
I haven't looked into it too
Okay.
much. I know
I was
that
just
Merrimack had said that theirs had increased 14%.
Okay, so it sounds like it's the
And I also know
budget.
that West Newbury had said theirs had increased more along the lines of 4 or 5%, if I recall correctly. So there were some spikes, and I do know that we have our Pentucket Regional School District monthly meeting,
Yeah.
I believe tomorrow. So I'm interested to see exactly what will happen with Pentucket as well. So I'd have to break down a little bit more. We just received them today.
Yeah,
But it
okay.
was a little bit, again, higher than I was hoping, given the
Yeah.
last year's increase. But yes, to your point, it is based on salary.
Right, as a percentage of the whole,
Yes,
yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody have any questions for Rebecca?
No.
No, this is
No.
pretty thorough.
Great information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great information and a tremendous amount of information as always.
And I like the new format a lot.
Like the snapshot of the budget?
Just the whole thing, it's really easy. It's easy to kind of, I mean, I'm sure it's not easy for you to pull this all together, but you've made it very easy sitting here in a few minutes to kind of look at it, listen to you, and get the overview of what it means.
It actually tracked back to your goals and my goals into an Excel spreadsheet, so I have each individual page so that I can make sure that what I'm updating you on also ties to those
Wow.
mechanisms as well. So it's keeping me more organized and on path. So that's why the memo will probably continue to kind of be a little refined as I try and find a way to not duplicate what I'm doing, but make it all kind of correlate together. And then the information you're receiving is not like, oh, wait, what is this one? Oh, wait, where is this coming from? So it's kind of all kind of seamless, or at least that's my goal.
I like that.
I love it.
like that. It's great.
Awesome. So we'll move forward with select board time and reports. Kathy?
Well, for next time, I will put together something short that kind of shows how this minimum required contribution comes about and how it we get impacted in several different ways on this Pentucket budget. It's not just enrollment, it's our percentage of enrollment, and initially, it's that minimum required contribution, which is unfortunately, we're treated as 3 standalone school districts instead of 1. So I thought it might be useful to understand that as things move forward. And I know, like, as you look at regional agreements, when I worked on the Pentucket one, on the group we were in, we did talk about whether we wanted to move away from that minimum required contribution at some point, because it's so outside our control, and it's prone to these economists at the state level and doing their thing, obviously. That's what it is. It's an economist's view of how to allocate wealth, and it has nothing to do with Proposition 2.5%. And I think the more that people understand that, they may be more understanding of why our share of Pentucket may be going up or down and have nothing to do with how much the budget is going up. Okay, so that was one thing. And the only other thing I wanted to say is I really want to thank the Council on Aging, the Friends of the Council on Aging, partnering with the Bagnell School, and in particular the Bagnell School Chorus, because as a older adult in town who doesn't have children in the school, once you don't have children in school, you lose touch with the school and the reason for it and the people in it. And seeing this amazing Bagnell chorus, and they were really good. I mean, there were years when I went to my children's concerts and was like, whoa. This was like, they were really exceptionally good, a very vibrant, very big chorus led by a music teacher who was obviously 150% invested in her job. And another thing, with my personal point of view on school budget is, they always like to go after the music and the arts, and this is one good reason why you don't do that. Looking at this gift to the community, the connection between the older citizens and the younger chorus coming together in one room. There was smiling faces on so many young and older people. It was just really nice to see that. I know that it took a lot of work for them to pull this off. I don't know that they'll do it every single year, but for that one moment in time, I think it made a powerful impression on both sides. And you don't often see that. You don't often see that. We should, look for more of those kind of connections, I think, in our community, because it was a lot of fun. And as I said, this chorus was, wow, top notch, really great. And Steve had a child in the chorus too, so kudos. Shout out.
Very excited to be there.
Yeah, that's great.
Becky?
Just a reminder that winter is here, so. I know. So just want to remind residents to help your neighbors that maybe need help with shoveling their pathways, their driveways, their sidewalks, right? Just important to look out whether they're older adults or just people that need some help. So just want to encourage you to look out for your neighbors.
That's right, look out for me, people.
Absolutely. Steve?
Just two things. One is for our next meeting, as I mentioned, I'll send over to Rebecca some of the info that I had gathered on fees related to field use fees. And then I just want to echo what Kathy said. The Council on Aging event was great on Saturday. I thought they did a great job. Miss O'Connor and the school chorus did a great job. It really was an awesome event. And the room was packed, so they had great attendance. I hope they do it again.
Congo
Awesome.
line, there was a
Ed.
Congo line.
Just two things. Remind everybody that yesterday was Pearl Harbor Day, and I didn't see anything on the news about that.
Right.
But as time goes on, people forget, but they should remember that. And then second of all, I don't know if everybody caught any of the news today about the people living in Massachusetts that are leaving, want to leave the state because of the high cost of living. High utility bills, taxes, real estate taxes,
Yeah.
high rents, and we're losing people. And they did say that we might lose a representative in Congress here, the next census, maybe two. But something's got to be done to bring down the cost of the utility. People complaining about natural gas and heat, the ridiculous prices for that they're gouging us, and we need to get to our state representatives, state senators, governor, and see if we can start bringing down some of the costs. Keep these people in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts isn't the easiest place to do a business. And businesses are moving out of Massachusetts, and that's hurting our tax base. But I don't know, probably on the local level, other than watching our warrant budget for next year, keep it as low as possible. We've got to help some of these people out. Other than that, I'm all set, thank you.
Great, thank you, Ed. And I want to invite everybody to the Bluegrass Christmas concert. It's free. It's at the Groveland Historical Society, featuring the St. James String Band, December 14th, 2025, at 2 p.m., and it'll run to 3:30 p.m., and refreshments will be served. And we also have correspondence from National Grid regarding their 2026 yearly operation plan. So,
I saw that. Does that mean they're going to be spraying something? Because we used to let our residents know if they're spraying in any of the
I
areas where,
think in the
children-
correspondence, it says that they're gonna give you 21-day notification if they're gonna be spraying. But if you wanna go over it in more detail, we can put it on the next agenda.
well, yeah, because we don't do the mosquito spraying anymore, right? Right? Because they used to let us know so we could close the windows, because my youngest had bad asthma. And that used to be one of the things that the pediatrician would say, you know, if they're going to spray anything, close the windows. Just so that people can be forewarned if they have any kind of
Yeah, it's
breathing
important,
issues.
because I misread it. This notice serves as the 21-day notice.
Probably, yeah. Well, that's, I mean, it's like they go. And to Ed's point, you know, they do have hearings. I once went to a gas rate hearing in Haverhill, and it was an eye-opener. I mean, they always have an excuse to jack the rates up, and then in the spring, they'll reduce them, but you never get, the people that spent all that money never really get back what they spent, because they were using the heat. So maybe, we should maybe, as a board, keep track of when those hearings are and weigh in on them on behalf of our community. If the heat, you know, everybody needs heat in the winter.
All right, so we'll put this on our next agenda,
Okay.
so we can discuss it. Maybe we'll have some idea of when the next meeting is for National Grid.
Yeah, it was in Haverhill, the one, this is years ago I went, and I don't know how I found out about it. I just went because I thought, oh, they're raising my gas prices. And they did it anyway, but at least I
That's-
went.
That's all governed by the governor's committee that she put together.
But they have to have hearings, I think.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
Because of the last big hike that they had to reverse.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn at 9:03.
Oh, my goodness. Motion to adjourn at 9:03.
Second? All in favor?
Yep.
Unanimous.